encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network. If you want to be a serious Bible student, a successful servant, and a powerful preacher, this is the podcast for you. Hello and welcome to Preachers in Training. My name is Robert Hatfield, and this is the podcast on which we discuss all things preaching and ministry. I want to welcome you into this episode in season 15 of the podcast. We're just trucking right along, and I am so happy to finally be getting to sit across the podcast table from Brother Billy, as we know you, Dr. Billy Smith, longtime professor and dean of the School of Biblical Studies at Freed-Hardeman University. And it's my pleasure now to get to work alongside you, Brother Billy, at the Henderson Church of Christ. And,
unbelievable.
Well, welcome to Preachers in Training. I'm so honored to have you today.
Well, it's great to be here, Robert, and I have looked forward to an opportunity to chat with you about whatever, but especially on the topic you've chosen for today. Mm-hmm. But when you say 15 years... you were only 19.
15 seasons. 15 seasons. So we do 2 seasons a year.
Oh, yeah, I see. Right. Okay.
And we had a period of time prior to the season stuff where we had like season 0. We didn't wise up and do the seasons till early on. But 2023 will make 10 years of doing this. Yeah. So, yeah. It's okay. I haven't been doing it that long.
For the audience benefit, let me say it's very easy for me to say that Robert is very easily not only one of the best, but one of my favorite former students. And I love you all. Mm-hmm. But he showed me before we started here a few moments ago his notebook in pristine condition. That has a note in it that I wrote in 2010.
That's correct.
That compared his notebook to the one that David Powell did, my first student, in 1978. The only thing Robert is wondering is, why did I only give him an A?
Yes.
Instead of an A+, which he did make in his presentation in class.
You. And that's really the one that matters.
There was nothing really to suggest or to recommend. But let me say personally, Robert, from the bottom of my heart, I am thrilled that the Henderson elders have selected you from a good list of good men to lead the pulpit going forward, and I will assist on a somewhat regular basis as needed. But
yes, sir.
But I'm thrilled that you and sweet Emily and Anna and Owen are here. Seamless transition.
It has been.
And I've told some people, I said, even for Anna and Owen, it might not have been as seamless, but it seems like.
Oh yeah, it has been
seamless.
For them. Yeah, it's been great.
And I believe in the long haul. That's the best way to do ministry, and I pray that you will be here for the long haul. It is a very important thing when you go from a teen at the age of my much older brother Roy, and I want to encourage everybody to continue praying for him. He's here in the building, walking on our track right now,
he is.
and doing well. But he's headed for bone marrow transplant in February. But anyway, when you move on from a team like us, where we are in life, to someone like you, that we have every confidence in, love for, and appreciation for what you've already accomplished. You and I did a meeting together over in North Charleston years ago. Who would have dreamed that this would have happened? But it's very important for an eldership to choose the right person for hopefully a long and effective, faithful tenure.
Yes.
And I believe they've done that.
Well, thank you, Brother Billy. That means a lot. I appreciate that. We are talking on today's episode about planned preaching. This is something about which we have spoken before, if you've been a part of our podcast, but today we're going to get into somewhat of the mechanics of it. And this is a concept that I guess I was very much introduced in your class, Preparation and Delivery of Sermons. So it was 200 level, B 231 or something like that. Right. So, more of on the fundamental end of the studies for undergrads. Right. I took it as an upperclassman because I was late to the party. And I loved it. I was already involved very much in my ministry in Pulaski, Tennessee at the time, driving back and forth on the weekends. And I just found it to be so practical and wonderful. And it was in that class. In fact, I've got the notes right here that you had prepared on planned preaching. And ever since then, I have tried to plan my preaching at least 6 months, if not a full year in advance. Right. And that has been such a blessing to me. Right. I could tell it was something near and dear to your heart, and I guess I knew then, but maybe I forgot. I've since been reminded that you wrote your dissertation on that concept.
Did. And, for me, I had never heard of the concept, even though I had excellent undergraduate teachers that you know and love. I had never heard of the concept until I came into contact with Philip Slate at Harding Graduate School. And he was a big proponent of it, and the only one that I've heard teach on it. And I fell so much in love with the idea that when it came time to decide what we're going to do as a project, a congregational project for the Doctor of Ministry program, I did all three of my graduate degrees there, that I proposed, and it was approved by the faculty, something that really has not been as popular or prominent among our brethren as it has been in the denominational world. But if you discover the concept and really buy into it, as a number of young men like you have, from what I hear, let me just mention one thing that I had forgotten. But last night, as I was reading through my dissertation again for the first time in several years, this was completed in 1990. Okay.
Yeah. And by the way, it's here on the table in front of us for those of you who are listening, the bound copy. And
it's available in the Harding Graduate School Library. It's supposed to be available at the Free Hardeman Library. I haven't checked in a while, but it's supposed to be. But anyway, a number of people have checked it out. But one thing that I came across back in doing all that research, really in the late 80s, it was a 2-year writing project and preaching project. We actually preached. Roy and I did at Estes at the time, and we had to preach the thing before we could, really report on it. So, but one source says that it has been calculated that the man who plans his preaching in advance, which is the concept of planned preaching, rather than a man who selects from week to week, conserves 1/3 of his life in preaching. In other words, can you believe that? We knew that it was a great time saver because there's another statement that says, well, I think I remember in one of Brother Baxter's books him saying that 50% oftentimes of research or 50% of preaching preparation consists in deciding what to preach. And if you've already got that decided back there before,
you have half the work done.
All that time, the mind never goes to sleep. We do, but the mind does not. I guess that's where dreams and horror stories and all that kind of thing come from. But anyway, your mind is constantly thinking, and you come across something and say, that will work in that lesson on. Or you have some real-life ministry experience, and you'll say, okay, that is an illustration. Or you could be watching, the playoffs, and something happened, and you could note that for a certain lesson. But that idea of removing the decision-making of week to week, and let it be said here at the beginning, too, that doesn't mean that you cannot make alterations or that you cannot make changes as some congregational need comes up that you've got to address. If there is a thesis statement for this discussion, it would be this: the preacher is the master of the plan. The plan is not the master of the preacher. And so you can make, there's some prominent guys out there who would have a disdain. I'm talking about mainly some that I've read from the past, who would have a disdain for anything other than something decided during the week.
Yeah. Because
they want, for lack of a better term, they use the phrase, I want to sniff the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you can still do that. If something comes up that I've done it a number of times, a title needs to be postponed. Mm-hmm. I've known of congregations that had tragedies that everything that was planned for Sunday was completely undone. Mm-hmm. It had to be. And so that, for anyone who lacks confidence in the validity of the concept, need to remember, and you might recall, in Prependale, I always had my students do a 1 month, assume that so many of them were going to be doing internships in the summer. Okay, assume that you are at so-and-so congregation in the summer, and they tell you you're going to be preaching for a full month of that 3 months. Some of the internships would be preaching internships. I want you to decide during this course what you're going to do Sunday morning, Sunday night for 4 Sundays. Don't give me the lesson. Just give me the idea. Give me the title, which is, title is different from idea, by the way. You could say, well, I'm going to preach on faith, but, what about faith? It's an endless topic, right?
Yes.
What about faith? So you got to be specific. And the text that you anticipate drawing from. Now, you might change that text as you get into your study.
Right.
By the way, it should also be said that while the planning is done at one setting, maybe even the year before the lessons are to be preached, the preparation of the lessons still is week to week. You just don't have to make the decision of what you're going to be doing. I remember another statement that said, if we would take the time that we spend in making decisions about what to preach, if we took that time from week to week and removed that time and let all of our time be study and research and not only preparation of the material, but preparation to deliver the material.
Right.
Then we would produce masterpieces, week after week. Well, that's not what the Lord is going to judge us on.
Right.
He's going to judge us on being faithful. But I get the point, what he's trying to say.
That's right. You mentioned, I remember back in class, and I've got the notes here in front of me, you said that this is advantageous for a variety of reasons. It helps the preacher to be a lifelong student. It's enabling us to provide a teaching ministry, conserves time and energy, to the point you made a moment ago. It offsets the unexpected, which is nice, and provides his preaching with a sense of purpose and direction. And that is good. I mean, it helps me to get a sense, do I need a series right now? Am I doing too many series? Is the congregation responding well? And you can look back over that year, or even look back a quarter in or 2 quarters in or whatever, and say, how's this going? Yeah. And adjust as you go, which is nice too.
That's true. That's true. Very true. All that's true.
Let's talk about the concept itself. You said it's essentially, we're just planning in advance what it is that we're going to preach at some point. What I've done, and maybe that's because you suggested it, I try and take some time, maybe September, October, November. I try to avoid the holidays because it's all done by then. And just lay it out. 52 weeks, here's the Sundays. These are the slots I'm preaching if I know that. Right. Okay, out here, this is what I'm doing. That's essentially the concept, right, of planned preaching?
I've not thought about this until you just said that. When you are preaching, my first tenure with the Henderson Church was 1973 and 74. It's what brought me back to Henderson after I'd completed my undergraduate degree. And Joan and I were living in Nashville at the time, and she was teaching at Lipscomb Elementary School, and I was preaching in the area there. And anyway, we had this opportunity to return to be a new position called assistant minister, which was to assist the local brother, the late Brother Phil Heffley, to assist him in every area, but to create a program for college students, which we did. But it also said you are going to be required to preach one Sunday morning and one Sunday night every month, and any other time that Brother Heffley might be away. Well, he had these little, a pad of little sheets that I don't know if he developed it or where he got them or what, but I happened to see those one day, and I got a little pad of those things that said AM topic, PM topic, and then some space for some notes or something. And once I found out, okay, it was like first Sunday morning, third Sunday night, fifth Sunday, if there was one. That really was the first time, because I planned that year pretty much, and I hadn't even realized it. That was called planned preaching. I never heard the term.
Yeah.
So that was something.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah. So I still have those somewhere. It's probably one of those file cabinets I said.
That's right. You were talking about the filing cabinets.
Right.
Talk about the background of the concept a little bit. You mentioned earlier this hasn't been extremely predominant within our fellowship and our brotherhood, but it's not by any means a new concept.
It has a biblical, what I call antecedent, because when we remember the story, first of all, we know about synagogue, or we know really more about tabernacle, temple services in the Old Testament, and the development of the synagogues, most likely in intertestamental period. But remember in Luke 4, in Jesus' case, when he goes back to Nazareth, that there was an assigned reading that, I don't know if the assigned reading that day was in Isaiah, but here's the way synagogue services operated. Every single Saturday, every single Saturday, they had an assigned reading consecutively from the law. And the law would be covered in, about 4 to 5 years by doing it that way. There was also, from what they call the rest of the Old Testament canon, the prophets. They just simply referred to it as the prophets. There was a little bit more liberty about what could be done with the prophets, but there was also a systematic way of working through the prophets, like in 7 to 10 years or something like that. So when Jesus goes back to Nazareth and is given the opportunity to speak, the assigned reading of that day had already been done. The comments by a priest or a rabbi, sometimes there even was a position called president of the synagogue. When he made the remarks that he was going to make, then any guest had the opportunity to speak. And Jesus never turned down an opportunity, as you know, and neither did Paul. But he called for what we know as Isaiah 61 and read it and said, "Today this has been fulfilled in your hearing," and they tried to kill him. Well, that shows the practice of something planned in advance, assigned in advance. And he used that opportunity to give them evidence, that he was the fulfillment of Isaiah 61. The same is true in Acts 13, when Paul goes to Antioch of Pisidia, and this is the first, as far as the record goes, full-length sermon that we have from Paul in the book of Acts. And the text says, after the reading from the law and the prophets.
Right.
After the assigned reading from the law and the prophets. Then Paul was given the opportunity to speak, and we have the rest of the speech in Acts 13. Now, moving on down to the Catholic world, which has always had the lectionary, and they have assigned passages, for their priests and bishops and so forth. That has been a long-standing tradition coming out of evidently those biblical examples.
Oh, I see.
And also from the idea of consecutively covering all of Scripture, which, we must do, the whole counsel of God.
Right.
So I want to tell one story in particular about a man named, a church reformer, Ulrich Zwingli, from Zurich, Switzerland. As a very young man, maybe 20 years of age, he was called to the great cathedral called the Great Minster to be, let's call it preacher, to be the preacher there. And he announced to those who we would refer to as elders that his plan on the first Sunday of 1519 was to preach consecutively through the book of Matthew. Well, they were accustomed to using the Catholic lectionary. It was a Catholic church. And, of course, he becomes one of the Reformation leaders out of that. He even has the organ removed, has communion every Sunday, and all this kind of thing. Well, what did they wound up killing him? They wound up killing him at 34.
Wow.
At your age,
That's
Robert.
right. That's how old I am.
So what happened was they were fearful that he'd kill the church and all that kind of thing. And it grew and it grew. Now, he didn't go 1 through 27 of the New Testament.
No.
He spent 6 years preaching consecutively through the New Testament. 6 years before he was killed. 6 years of preaching various books of the Old Testament. And he did it according to a plan. He went from Matthew, not to Mark, but to Acts. And then from Acts to 1 Timothy, because he was trying to get the idea of the church, the New Testament church, from before the people. And then he would go back to Romans or whatever from Paul, but he covered it all.
Isn't that interesting?
According to need. And again, he was martyred at age 34 in those Catholic Protestant wars. But he quoted as evidence for what he's planning to do. He had evidence of Chrysostom, who was in the 5th century, Augustine in the 4th century A.D., that they also were proponents of preaching according to plan, advanced planning.
Wow. Okay.
And so, what some people do, Robert, get back to the point of, how do we actually do this? You've got to get away. You've got to get away.
Yeah.
And
some preachers call it a retreat. I mean, it's just
a planning,
some kind of
planning retreat.
And the leadership understands.
The leadership, once they see the benefit of it, will insist on it.
Yeah.
It's like insisting. I've had a lot of guys say, boy, when I was hired, they said there are 2 things we want you to do, and it won't be vacation time. We want you to go to Freed Hardeman lectureship every year, and we want you to take our kids to Horizons every year. And so I'd like to work for an eldership like that.
Yes.
So the idea is you've got to get away. And if I could refer again very briefly, I haven't had a chance to talk to Alan about this recently, but one of my first graduate students, when we started graduate training, and this would have been probably spring of 90, somewhere along there, was this young man I'd never heard of met before, because he went to Faulkner, Alan Webster. When we got to this particular area of our study in that class, and I required a 3-month project, man, he took that seriously. And I talked about the possibility of going all the way to a year. For the undergraduate student, I say, I want you to do a month, but I want you to proceed to 3 months when you get out of here, and then to 6 months, and then to a whole year. If you can develop the discipline of doing that, and that's what it takes. You've got to have the discipline and dedication to it, rather than just jumping here, there, and everywhere.
Right.
Well, Alan, went back to Jacksonville, and you're probably right. It may very well have been Mark Howell that he first invited. I know it was a couple of guys that they went off to a cabin somewhere. They brought books with them, and for a solid week, or maybe 3 days to a week, they sat down and talked about what they're going to be doing the next year at their respective congregations, and lo and behold, that turned out to be polishing the pulpit. It just goes to show what a seed idea can, when you have a excellent, beyond excellent student, takes that idea and really does something with it. That's blessed, thousands and thousands of people.
Yeah. When you lay out that year in front of you, and I just did this, and I'm because I'm just starting this work here, I'm sort of going in a little differently than I do when I'm in the middle of the work. But you lay that year out, and you see 52 Sundays, and then you multiply that by 2 since you have Sunday evenings, so you're looking at 104 sermons. And then you remove whatever special days, gospel meetings, whatever it is, your time away when you're going to be elsewhere. It makes you realize it's not really that many opportunities.
It's not.
It feels like a lot, but you realize I need to be very judicious with this.
Right.
And planned preaching sort of helps you to come to grips with that fact.
It gives you a view of the whole year. And, of course, obviously, let it be said that the concept of planned preaching begins with biblical preaching. We have no right to be up there if we're not biblical preachers. 2 Timothy 4:2 is the best expression ever. Preach the word, which combines the content as well as the communication of the content. So we've got to excel in both of those areas. But this is one thing that can help us spend more time, because every preacher or minister that's listening to us right now will say, "Boy, I wish I had the time to do that. I wish I could take 3 days, and go somewhere and plan for a year or plan for 3 months or whatever your choice may be." In this project, I point out there's the monthly plan, there's the quarterly plan, there's the biannual plan, there's the annual plan, and then there in the denominational world, there are 3-year, 4-year, and 5-year plans.
Interesting.
But all of that happens because, they have church headquarters and all that sort of thing that certainly are outside the realm of biblical teaching, and therefore we don't have. And I think that's why it's not been used that much among our brethren. But the ones that have had what I think is more of a whole or complete ministry. One of the things this says is the pulpit is a teaching ministry.
Yes.
It is not just the act of preaching and I sit down and, wow, well, I've got that one done. And tonight I'll do it again. No. Every opportunity is to teach the Word of God, even though the act of preaching does require different dynamics and so forth.
And I like that intentionality about it.
Right.
It's more than just checking the box.
Exactly.
And for some people, that's, I think for maybe some weaker Christians in the pews, that's what preaching is. Okay, now it's time for this part. Well, we need to show it's more than that. And we can do that, yes, in what we say, but I think also in just the example of there is intentionality in what we're preaching and teaching.
Right, absolutely.
That's why I like the idea of going through books of the Bible, as you said, Zwingli did, and others have, many others have, because it's going to force you to cover topics that maybe you would not have thought of on your own. It's just right there in the text, which is nice.
And what you learn as a Bible student is, I cannot believe how that text was perfect for some situation that we've got happening here in this church. It really is. And I think, again, all of that is just further evidence of the inspiration of God and the practicality of that inspiration to life today.
I heard Brother Holland say one time that when he preached at Creve Hall, if there was something kind of bubbling under the surface, some kind of problem or issue the congregation needed to work through, he would just select a book of the probably New Testament or Old, either one, but mostly New Testament, what Brother Holland did, and he knew that eventually he would hit that issue.
That's right.
But he didn't want to sort of be direct and confront it head on. Instead, he thought, maybe I can give this a little time, and then if I preach through this, it won't seem like this was targeted is the best word, I think.
That is exactly right in terms of the advantages of preaching through books.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Is because you're eventually, I use James as a prime example. Robert, there is not a paragraph in that book, the Proverbs of the New Testament, we call it. There's not a paragraph in that book, sometimes just an individual text, that is not perfect.
Yes.
It's the truth. Mm-hmm. It's the truth of God, and it's not going to change. And everybody needs to know it better, more thorough. I said something in a class here, auditorium class recently. Mm-hmm. No, it was the last sermon I preached before you came in December, in which I explained from the background of a New Testament story, an expression that Jesus used. I had so many people come out and say, that has bothered me all of my life. And I said, well, I'm sorry I waited this long to explain that. Yes. See, that is the thrill of the opportunity. And it's not, I don't mean the word thrill in a bad way, but I mean, it's exciting to be able to bring people closer to an understanding of what the text is saying as well as what it's not. Mm-hmm. But, the whole idea of organization, of discipline, and, just to give you an example, when my kids were small and before I was really very much along into this would be more like, late 70s, 80s, and I finished this in the latter part of the 80s and then 90. But my kids could tell, and I was preaching 2 sermons, every week, Bible class every week on Sunday. Well, my kids could tell Friday night, if nothing else during the week, Friday night was definitely family night where we did everything. The 4 of us did everything together. It might have been in-house. It might have been in Jackson most of the time. But they could tell from my demeanor whether I was ready for Sunday or not.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I was not, because you have a full week at school.
Right.
And all the things going on there, and you're looking forward to Saturday of really tying everything up. Mm-hmm. But if I was prepared, I was a different person.
Yeah.
And they could tell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm. So sometimes they'd ask me, okay, Dad, what are you preaching on Sunday?
They were helping you in your sermon preparation. On the other side of that, talking about expository and preaching through books too, on the topical side, and this piece of paper I've got here is one of the ones that has blessed me the most that you gave to us. At the top it says the Whole Counsel of God, and you've got 65 topics plus, because you have some subtopics under there.
Right.
And I have taken that list. In fact, what I did on my computer, I used a program to do this, but I'll take sermons through the year, and tag them or put them in folders under these topics. And then periodically, maybe at the end of, maybe at the halfway mark, June or July, I'll go in and say, okay, how am I doing here? Yeah. Or at the end of the year, I'll go back through the previous year and I'll say, okay, what subjects have I neglected? And that informs me for my future planning. All right, I really need to hit that this year because I didn't really emphasize it last year. And I want to commend that too as a resource, but also as a pro for consideration of planned preaching.
And I hope that I emphasize by calling it the Whole Counsel of God from Acts 20:27, which is one of my favorite texts. Mm-hmm. I think it also reminds us of our responsibility, divine responsibility.
Right.
I hope that I explained at the time that by listing just those theme areas, and even some sub areas under it, that I wasn't saying this document is the Whole Counsel of God.
Right.
It was a goal to getting there, a suggestion. And boy, I have taken my copy of this and written, just all over it and preached a lot of topics that are not there.
Yes.
But I think it is a good idea. in that class where you had so much experience and led the way, and I was so grateful, or I would have missed you. But to the young man who'd never preached a sermon before, I was very sympathetic and knew that, boy, this is going to be nerve-wracking. I mean, I would even have athletes who later developed an interest in preaching. Yeah. That all they were doing is looking for a convenient Bible class,
right,
to not interfere with baseball games.
Yeah,
But I would make the suggestion, okay, I want you to make a list of your favorite Bible verses. Just sit down, if it's 5, if it's 10, and then let your first lessons come from your study of those verses. I think I would say something like, okay, think of the 23rd Psalm. If you think that everything has been said that could be said about the 23rd Psalm, no.
Yeah. Wow.
They haven't heard what it means to you, or how it has helped you, or what this psalm can do for you. But the guys that would do that, they would get their very first experience. Or I said, it might be a Bible character. Why? There are 2,930 of them in Scripture. Some of them are only in genealogies that don't help us very much. Yeah. But there are a lot of people in the Bible that we could preach 50 years and probably not touch maybe some of the lesser knowns, that one statement about them says a whole lot. Right. And then we apply it, to us. Yeah. So for the beginning guy, that's a good way, I think, to start, because it's a scary thing. I can remember I was pushed into it, man, and I thought, that is one thing I'm not going to do, and I cannot do, Yeah. But I appreciate the way in which you were nurtured all the way along, and I too came from a preaching. Blessed. I came too from a preaching family, so I had a lot of encouragement, but I had a really great eldership that was responsible for pushing me into that first sermon.
Yeah. Once you plan your preaching for a year. And then at the end of that, you look back and you see what all you were able to accomplish to the glory of God, and how much easier it was than trying to do the week-to-week approach.
Yes.
I think you'll be sold on it from that point forward.
I think so, too. Yeah. I think if you do it one time, and really, Robert, you could do it incrementally.
Yes.
I mean, when you have like this maybe a desk calendar or something like that out on your desk or your study table, and you see all of these months and all of these weeks. And one thing I meant to mention about how the concept developed was that the Catholic Church is the one responsible for developing the 7 seasons of the Christian year. Yes. And we don't follow that. Except, we usually do something on the resurrection around Easter, and we I don't push the birth of Jesus at Christmas, but I do make lessons in December Christ-centered, the person of Christ and the work of Christ.
People are thinking about
because that's what they're thinking about, right? Yeah. But okay, I've got suggestions in this project about there's the Congregational Calendar. Okay, when is Vacation Bible School?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, a lot of our congregations had spring gospel meetings and fall gospel meetings. On New Year's Day, you need to do something special. Mother's Day, Father's Day. Right. I tell you what, if you don't preach on Mother's Day, you're in trouble.
You're in big trouble. And if you've ever forgotten Mother's Day in the pulpit, there's another reason for planned preaching.
Yes, that's right. And you know what? I learned this from a young man one time. After being pretty hard on fathers, on Father's Day, a guy came out and said to me, he was a young father of 3. He said, "Brother Billy, why is it that mothers are always praised and you guys beat up on us dads?"
That's right.
That changed me.
Right. Same.
Changed me.
I've had that same experience.
Oh, my. But, you're going to preach something on Thanksgiving before Thanksgiving, most likely. And so a lot of things are already taken. But I call it the Congregational Calendar. What are events that we've got in our calendar every year? just like our worship committee here at the Henderson Church.
Yeah.
We have a day for missions. We have a day for youth. We have a day for college students. We have a day for family out of the year. So in Roy and my last 2 years of tenure, we had 2 years that were planned by the worship committee based upon input from the congregation.
That's wonderful.
That's one of your best things. And had Roy and I touched on a lot of those topics before? Yes. Sure. But there were some we had not. Mm-hmm. And, for instance, the role of a Christian in politics. Well, we've talked about government before and stuff like that. But with the political division that we have in the country
it's come
now,
back to the fore lately.
Man, I preached on that during the summer, and it was one of the most commented, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's needed.
Maybe pro or con.
Yeah, right.
But the concept just has a lot to commend it. And I think it makes a much better preacher. I think it makes a preacher who's happier. Mm-hmm. I think he enjoys his family more. When the kids are gone, he and his wife continue to, bond and develop. She's as much a part of the team. And I can't tell you, I'm sure you do too. I can't tell you how many things that I ask for Joan's input and reaction.
Almost every week for me.
Right. And she's been so good about that.
Yes.
A native of the Henderson Church, by the way.
Right.
But anyway, I'm a big proponent of it, practitioner of it, and want everybody who might be fearful of it to know there are ways. The civil calendar, like for instance, on Veterans Day or something like that, the Sunday before that, or Memorial Day.
Memorial Day, yeah.
Right. Maybe it's what more I was thinking of. I've preached on the glory of work the Sunday before Labor Day.
Yes.
That work is not a bad word. Adam and Eve worked before they sinned and tending the garden. So, they're sometimes maybe not expected topics, but there will be folks that will say, I've never heard a lesson on that before. Yeah. And the preacher just continues to grow and grow and grow. Mm-hmm. And you're right. I've seen one of those Holland handwritten sketches at Creve Hall while he was there.
Yeah.
And the one that he had at the time covered about 4 months.
Oh, wow.
That wasn't a full year. It was about 4 months. And I looked at that and I said, can I make a copy of this right quick?
Exactly. Can I just take this for a little while? Oh, Brother Holland was great.
Oh, he was.
Yeah, he was.
Loved him. He is as responsible as anyone for me making the firm decision to preach, because I was pushed, but the desire was not there.
Oh,
I had him in the very first class here. It was a fundamentals of speech class.
Oh, okay.
But I knew him as a preacher, and I never missed a day, never missed a class, and it was in that class that I made the decision. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And it was basically I had the family influence, yes, but that day-to-day opportunity to be with him, and then there's so many others that you realize that not everyone can do this, and there are a lot of other things that preachers can do, but there's nothing more important that they can do with their life. I mean, I really believe that.
Yeah.
I mean, one reason why that our lessons need to be well planned and presented, we're taking 30 minutes or whatever it is of people's collective time, and we get to talk to them about God. We get to talk to them, we need to reveal God's word.
Yeah.
And it's the world's only hope. And we get to do it. And so I think that should be something that maintains the joy. Are our hearts going to be absolutely stomped on sometimes? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Crushed. But it again is the word that helps bring us out of it. And I'm just very grateful for every opportunity the Lord has given me and that He's giving you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And that sounds like a wonderful note on which to end our time today. I'm so grateful for your time on the podcast today and for you bringing back out your dissertation and reviewing that and sharing some of that with us today. It's been wonderful.
It's called Designing a Program of Planned Preaching for the Estes Church of Christ, where we were at the time, Henderson, Tennessee. Yeah. And the key words are designing, because there had to be something unique about it, and we didn't even get into what I actually did. What I maybe another time we'll talk about that. How I actually wound up doing it, which was not what I intended at the beginning. It turned out to be something different. Designing program, planned preaching for the Estes Church, and we then implemented the plan for 12 months. Roy said it was his happiest year ever because I told him everything to do. But I pretty much told him everything to do most of the time.
Wow. All right. We'll just keep that between us and all our friends who are
just
listening.
Between us. Let me tell you something about my brother Roy. 35 years that we've had the chance to minister together. I do not know of a better person. I can't say any more because it's going to bring me to tears, but he is going to do great. He has done great so far. Yeah. And the Lord is blessing him, and he's loving preaching at Linden. Yeah. He does not want to miss. He goes Wednesdays and Sundays. And right now, I talked to him a few moments ago. Right now, he's concerned about possible snow tomorrow.
I know.
If he doesn't get to go.
Yeah.
And I said, no. I said, you'll go. You'll go. You'll truck on over there.
Yeah.
But
he's a blessing to all of us.
He's been the perfect preaching partner. He really has.
Brother Billy, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Robert.
And thank all of you for listening or watching. Remind you that brand new episodes of Preachers in Training release each Thursday from thelightnetwork.tv or our podcasting partners, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and the like. Hit that subscribe button if you enjoy the podcast so you never miss an episode. That's going to do it for this edition of Preachers in Training. Until next time, I'm Robert Hatfield. Let's go preach the word.
Amen.